Hello friends, welcome to Grow in Chess channel and episode 2 of Steinitz Zukertort match 1886. First game was won by Steinitz playing black pieces, taking 1-0 early lead in the match. If you have not checked our video on this game 1, please do check it. I'll put the link in the description. Now today we are going to see the game 2, how Zukertort bounced back in this game 2 playing black pieces. In game 2, Steinitz played e4, to which Zukertort responded with e5. Steinitz had prepared the Scotch variation of the 4 knights. So knight f3, knight c6, d4, ed4, knight into d4, knight f6, knight c3, bishop b4, pinning this knight, putting more pressure on the central e4 pawn. So white took here knight into c6, to which black captured towards the center. If d into c6, then there is queen into d8, ruining the castle position, ruining this king and also the pawn structure a bit. White has some slight edge in this position. So black rightly played b into c6, bishop d3, d5. Now this d5 move is very important. You need to fight for the center, because if you see now in this position, black has got no pawns in the center. So black needs to fight for the central control. Played d5, fighting for the light square control. E into d5. White has one more variation here. He can play e5, but after knight g4 with the idea of f6 pawn break, I think black is fine in this position. In fact, black even gets slightly more active position after the f6 pawn break. For example, let's say he goes castles, bishop f4, f6, and black has a really good position. Here, instead of bishop f4, he can't go rook e1 because of the move queen h4, attacking both these points, and this is just winning for black. So here he simply played e into d5, c into d5 was played, castles, bishop g5, pinning this knight and putting the pressure on d5 point at the same time. So here you can't really play h6 attacking the bishop, because now he will take bishop into f6. If you take queen into f6, there is knight into d5. And here if you take g into f6, first point is your king has been weakened a lot on the king side, and even now white can play knight into d5 because of the discovery, winning the queen. Okay, so here after bishop g5, it's very important to control this sensitive point on d5 by playing c6. Now this solidifies black's position on the light squares and in the center. So after c6, white went knight e2. If you see after c6, white's knight is completely dominated. White's knight has got very less scope on the c3 square. So he immediately improves the knight to e2, wanting to go to g3 and to be active on those squares on the king side. Okay, black responded with bishop d6, because now after this knight has gone, the king is gone, the pin is gone, this bishop on b4 has got no job over there. So this bishop comes back to d6. Knight g3 was played, h6 now attacking the bishop. Bishop went back to d2. Of course, he doesn't want to give up the bishop, so he played bishop to d2. Knight to g4. This move is very nice, actually a very active move. The point is, generally these kind of moves are not working because of the h3 point, and the knight will have to just step back. But here h3 doesn't work. Can you tell me why? You can pause the video if you want. After h3, black can simply sacrifice knight into f2, saying that if you take rook into f2, I'm going to get my piece back and I've got that extra pawn, plus your dark squares are extremely weak. This is pretty close to winning for black. So here, knight into f2, white can respond with king into f2, asking black a question. Okay, I'm defending the knight now, I've grabbed your knight, what is your plan? But then comes the move queen to h4. How are you going to defend this knight? You can play queen f3. If you see in this position now, this queen and king both are stuck. Stuck as in they cannot get out of this pin. The queen cannot offer itself for a trade. The bishop f4 move is not coming. So black simply plays bd7. Now let's say he plays something like rook ae1. Black should respond with f5, f4, trying to win the knight. And there is no way for white to get out of the spin in this very uncomfortable position. You'll have to give back the piece, after which black will be clearly better. Very close to winning, I should say. Pawn up as well. So this h3 move doesn't work. Knight into f2 point. Alright, so white went for bishop e2, attacking the knight. Black played queen h4, defending the knight and threatening a one move checkmate. White had to take. Again, h3 doesn't work because of the same idea. Now the g3 knight is already hanging with two pieces. After knight into f2, white has got no resource. So white played bishop into g4. Bishop into g4, queen c1. Now what has black achieved with this knight g4 plan? Black has achieved a bishop pair. Black has forced white to capture the knight with his bishop and lose his bishop pair. And also, if you check the center, it's not a closed one. It's an open position in which the two bishops are going to dominate this knight. So after queen c1, bishop e2 was played. I'm not a big fan of this plan of transferring the bishop on this diagonal. Maybe he could have simply played something like this or started with f5 straight away. But he played this. Okay, obviously knight into e2 is not possible because queen into h2 is a checkmate. He has to save the rook, and then he went on for this move, transferring the bishop altogether to a different diagonal. But I think bishop on this diagonal was also good enough. This is also fine. Black is slightly better. So white played bishop c3 here, trying to improve the bishop. And black now started with a very important plan to attack on white's king side, f5. What is the idea? I probably want to play f4 and f3, weakening his light squares on the king side. So after f5, white went for rook e6, attacking the bishop, to which black responded with rook a d8, simply developing the rook and defending this bishop. White went for queen d2, trying to improve his position. d4 now. What is the point? He is attacking the d4 point twice, but there is this discovery idea because of which he is not able to capture the d4 pawn. If he takes with the bishop, I will take bishop into g3, and now I'm attacking this twice. Takes this and then this. Even after h into g3, I am a piece up. So another option is queen into d4. Even now, queen into d4, bishop into d4, and bishop into g3. And I'm going to win this piece. So h into g3, rook into d4. Black is a piece up. And simply winning. Here, there is one more option to see the discovery idea, but after bishop into g3, the problem is white is threatening a mate. So that doesn't work. He has to capture the queen first and then play bishop into g3. Okay, so he had to save this bishop. We saw already that he cannot capture on d4. So he played bishop a5, attacking the rook. This rook needs to defend the bishop, so he played rook to d7. Now white had a simplifying idea in this position. It's a tactical idea, but it's not giving him any advantage. But it is trying to simplify the position, trying to exchange the more attacking pieces. Rook into d6. This bishop is simply very powerful as compared to this bishop. So rook into d6, what is the idea? He wants to play bishop b4, skewering the two rooks, and you cannot play c5 because it's not supported. Black played queen f6, rook to d1. Still is not hurrying to capture the rooks because they are already in a skewer position. You cannot save both of them. Rook d5 was played now. Now white has to take this, otherwise he will be down and exchange. Bishop into f8, queen into f8. Knight h5. What is the point? He wants to improve the knight and put it on f4, where the knight is much better placed, and it is also on a dark square where your bishop cannot pressurize. After knight h5, queen e8 was played. Knight f4, rook e5. Now, can he capture this? Of course not, because of the back rank problem. It is rook e1, rook into e1, queen into e1 would be a checkmate. So here, after rook e5, white solved his problem by playing h4. Probably ideas are also like playing h5 and fixing this knight's outpost so that black can never go g5, fixing this g7 pawn as well, and also trying to control the g5 square. After h4, black played c5, defending this pawn, And this d4 pawn is extremely powerful, actually very strong, controlling very important squares. And another important job which it's doing is blocking off the d file so that there is no counter in the center. White after c5 went for h5. What is the idea? Is fixing the pawn structure as we have already seen it. Also this outpost. Black played rook e4 here. c3, queen to b8. Can you tell me what is the idea behind queen b8? The idea here behind queen b8 is to pressurize this knight and provoke white to play g3. Now, how would g3 benefit black? g3 weakens the light squares, and if you see the bishop which you have, that is also of the same color. So by provoking g3, black is weakening white's king side. Very nice move, queen b8. Okay, he went centralizing the queen. He went to e5. White played knight g6, queen d6, knight f4. Now if you see in this position, white doesn't have a plan to proceed. How is white going to proceed? His three pawns are already, he cannot move here on the king side, already has created a lot of weaknesses. D file has been blocked very firmly using these two pawns and the rook. And this pawn structure, this queen side pawn structure is not easily mobile for white. Whereas black, because of this pawn structure, there is a potential passed pawn on the D file, which is going to give him immense counterplay. We'll see in the game. Black after knight f4 played d3, creating a passed pawn. But the point here is, you can ask, why can't I simply take? I have three attackers on d3, whereas black has only two defenders. If he plays knight into d3, the idea is bishop into d3. Queen into d3 is forced, and now comes the brilliant move, rook to e1 check. He can't capture rook into e1 because his queen is hanging, and if he simply tries to move the king away, I can take rook into d1, winning a free rook and the game. So here he could not take the d3 pawn. Now black wants to play c4 and create a protected passed pawn, which is absolutely dominating and cutting white's position into two parts. So white played b3 trying to stop c4, still c4. The point is I want to take and then create two weaknesses and also support my c4 pawn. He played rook b1, hoping for some counterplay on the queen side, and then from there he can attack the king, trying to penetrate from the b file in near future. Okay, of course now I'm controlling the b8 square, but in near future he might hope that he would get something on the b file. King h7, a very strong prophylactic move. Generally I don't want him to enter here in a check so that I can save a move. Now that I have time to use this move and step away from the check. These kind of prophylactic moves are very important. After king h7, white played king h2 for the same reason, stepping out of the back rank. Queen b6 was played, king g1 was played, just controlling f2. Basically white has got no plan, as we have discussed this earlier. White is trying to hold the position and probably wanting to maybe hope for a draw in this game. Bishop to b7. Now if you see, after these pawns are here, this bishop has got very less scope on this diagonal, and if you remember, we had provoked g3 with this queen b8 move, pressurizing here. We have weakened his light squares. So now the next plan is to create a battery attack on this diagonal, forcing white to close this diagonal by playing f3, another pawn move which cannot be reversed, and that is going to create a lot of weaknesses on the 7th rank too. So after bishop b7, obviously you can't take because of this pin. That is why black had played queen b6, pinning that b3 pawn. Rook b2. Now the rook is supported with the queen and he wants to play b into c4. Queen c6. Idea, rook e1 check. For example, let's say he plays this now, rook e1 check, queen into e1, queen h1 is a checkmate. So white had to play f3 here, closing down the diagonal, but weakening his king even more. Black played queen c5 check, queen f2. Now if you see this position after the queens getting exchanged, the end game is always going to be clearly better for black because of this d3 advanced passed pawn and a protected passed pawn, which is not going to stay protected for so long, but still this pawn is going to dictate the game after the queens are being exchanged. So before exchanging the queens, black just used this pin and played rook e1 check, king h2. He doesn't want to step on this light square diagonal. Queen into f2, rook into f2, bishop into f3. If you see, this knight was a brilliant piece in the middle game. It was on an outpost, but now that the queens are exchanged, his rook is not coming to the 8th rank and the game is revolving around this passed pawn. The point is, if you take, I'm going to play d2, and this knight, if you compare this passed pawn, this knight is a misplaced piece. I cannot stop this passed pawn as white. This rook also cannot stop the d1 promotion, so he cannot capture this bishop. After g4, black played bishop e2. Black can also take bishop into g4 or f into g4. It's all fine. He's going to win another pawn. But black played a brilliant move, which is the most precise and the best way towards victory. Bishop e2. Knight g2, attacking the rook, d2. Now the rook is defending the bishop, the pawn is defending the rook. So if you take the rook, the pawn is going to promote itself. Went for knight e3, hoping for a sacrifice on d1. C into b3, a into b3, bishop into g4. Now I just stepped away and attacked the knight. White can take this pawn, no problem. Black is going to play rook into e3, and what's the material count? 4 pawns versus 3 and an extra bishop. So black is a piece and pawn up, and all these pawns are going to fall. And black with this game bounced back and Zukertort leveled the score in the match 1-1. Zukertort made clear that he is going to fight for the title and is not going to give his way to Steinitz that easily. If you have found this video instructive, please like it and subscribe to our channel. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and see you soon in the next video with more instructive content.